There were 145 combat clashes on the front line over the past day. The enemy attacked the most in the Hulyaihorod direction. The General Staff counted 34 attacks by the occupiers in the areas of Hulyaihorod, Mern, and towards Sviatopetrivka, Zaliznikne, Dobropilya, and Starukrainka. There were 22 enemy assaults in the Pokrovsk direction and 20 in the Sloviansk direction. 7 attacks were recorded in both the Oleksandrivka and Lyman sectors of the front. The enemy tried 3 times to break through the defensive lines of our defenders in the Kupiansk and southern Slobozhansky directions. Vladislav Voloshin is on the line, Colonel and spokesperson for the Southern Ukraine Defense Forces. Mr. Vladislav, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. So let's start with the Hulyaihorod direction. The Russians are now specifically focusing their assaults on the railway in this direction. Could you please further explain why this is happening? And actually, what is the operational situation there?
Indeed, the single highest number of combat engagements, a total of 18 separate incidents, were recorded over the course of the past 24 hours. The Russians attempted to break through and enter to take full control of the village of Zaliznichne. That right there is the station, or more specifically, the Hulyaihorod railway station. The enemy is currently trying their best to take control of this settlement because, first of all, it is situated directly to the south and to the southwest of the town of Hulyaihorod. That is to say, in order to fully encircle the city of Hulyaihorod, since the enemy forces still cannot take control of it and completely push out the Ukrainian defense forces, they have strategically decided, first of all, to extensively mine the area. They are planting landmines along all the roads and paths leading into Hulyaihorod, as well as the streets and even the private yards and courtyards. And since they simply cannot completely drive out the defense forces from there, they have now decided to bypass the city entirely and encircle it from both the northern and the southern flanks. In order to bypass from the south, the enemy forces encountered the settlement of Zaliznikne directly on their way. Essentially, the enemy is trying to advance further west toward Verkhnya Tersa, toward the city of Orikhiv, and ultimately toward Zaporizhzhia. That is precisely why they need to capture this settlement to secure their flank. Throughout the course of the past several days, in the areas surrounding this small village, the enemy forces have been persistently carrying out 20 to 25 aggressive assault operations on a daily basis. A very similar situation is now unfolding in the area just north of Hulyaihorod, where there are several key settlements including Priluki, Zelene, and Dobropilya that are all facing these same conditions. There the enemy is conducting somewhat fewer assault actions, but not by much. There too we record a dozen and a half. Furthermore, it is important to note that Russian propaganda has already captured and occupied Zaliznikne for more than 2 weeks. And now it has begun to officially claim that it has taken the next settlement after Zaliznikne, Girke.
Yeah.
But, well, you understand, the fighting is taking place several kilometers away from these settlements, and in particular, there are no enemy forces in Zaliznichne itself, and Hirke remains under our control. So, as you can see, this is yet another blatant Russian fake.
What kind of specific Russian activity is currently being monitored on the border of the Dnipro-Petrovsk region?
The border between the Dnipro-Petrovsk and Zaporizhzhia regions is, let's say, one of the sections of the line of contact where Ukraine's defense forces are also currently conducting fairly active counterattack operations. But at the same time, the enemy is also continuing its persistent assault operations. Over the past day, we have recorded 7 assault actions. Primarily, these intense combat operations are taking place near the settlements of Zlahoda and Ternov, as well as several other surrounding localities in the area. In these specific sectors, the enemy forces are persistently trying to push back the defense forces of Ukraine, aiming to halt our ongoing recovery operations and, well, push our units as far away as they possibly can. Their ultimate objective is to seize and capture as much of the Dnipro-Petrovsk region as they possibly can. Furthermore, according to the latest intelligence reports, the Russian 90th Tank Division is fighting there. Furthermore, according to our intelligence reports, because the Russian military has been unable to push the Ukrainian defense forces out of that area, Several high-ranking leaders and senior commanders of this specific unit, including the division commander, the regiment commanders, and the division chief of staff, have now received severe formal reprimands from the top Russian leadership. This is due to their failure to accomplish their assigned strategic tasks, namely, to drive the Ukrainian defense forces back across the Vovcha River and successfully capture several different settlements along their way.
Well, and of course, it's worth talking about the island part of the Kherson region. Mr. Vladislav, we often mention this. What is the situation there now? What weapons do the Russians keep there? And how do they move between the islands? Do they move the infantry specifically? How are they managing to do this now, and are they succeeding at all?
Well, to be honest, they're not really succeeding at all, because whenever we detect such movements, we immediately try to destroy them, striking back with both our kamikaze drones and heavy artillery. Over the past day, one combat engagement was recorded in the island zone. The enemy tried to land troops and assault our positions on Bilorudi Island. Well, generally speaking, the situation there regarding assault actions is somewhat, let's say, calmer now than in Zaporizhzhia, in the Zaporizhzhia direction, in the Orikiv, Hulyaihorod, and Oleksandrivka directions. However, the enemy has not shown any signs of reducing the total number of kamikaze drone strikes or heavy artillery shelling. And more recently than that, for the past 3 or 4 days in a row, the enemy has actively started carrying out and executing airstrikes using unguided aerial rockets. They are currently using military army aviation units and helicopters, and they are carrying out intensive strikes against the right bank, particularly targeting various residential settlements located somewhat downstream from the now destroyed and former Kakhovka Dam. These are the specific settlements. Today, for example, they struck the area of Pridniprovsk. So the situation is quite complicated. The enemy is still stationed on those various islands. Well, they are not currently active enough right now to execute or carry out, let's say, any major assault actions. But they are definitely trying to conduct logistical operations and rotate their personnel at those specific observation posts that are located on several of the islands.